Hello, podcast listener. Thank you for listening to JJ Meets World. We've got a great episode put together today, and heck, if it wasn't, I would still say it's great. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. So our guest is Paul McDonald, Tucker's uncle. We're going to talk about Star Trek. We're going to talk about baseball, and pretty much those are the topics of the day. You're going to be surprised about how deep of a dive we take into those two things. And Tucker and I talk about what would be at a real big person Chuck E. Cheese. Not like an obese person, but like an adult, like when you grow up and be big. Like a Tom Hanks big. Patreon.com/JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
When we were younger, Tucker, there was a real swell for companies to get in on the kid dollar. And they wanted to come up with all of these places where, quote unquote, a kid can be a kid and your fantasies can come true. And it's a great place to play. So I'm thinking of the Chuck E. Cheeses, the Chutes and Ladders, the Discovery Zones. Heck, even Disney, I think, had a thing called Club Disney for a little while.
Yep.
I never...
The Burger King Kids Club.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one, too. Any of the McDonald's that had a play place in it. Mm-hmm. None of these places ever really, made me feel amazing, though.
Okay.
I never felt like my fantasies are being truly lived.
Your self-esteem wasn't being lifted in any way.
Right. And so here's my wonder. I'm to a point now where I've got a lot of disposable income.
Right.
Because, making that mad radio money.
Right.
I would love a real-life, adult-sized play place.
What would you want in that thing, though? Because, what do you...
An adult-sized ball crawl.
Okay.
That would be one of them. A really, really, really big hot tub that, has a current in it. So you'd be sitting there, but you'd be swirling around going, whoa! I would also want a slide, but like a 3-story slide. Right?
Ski ball?
Oh, yeah.
Ninja Turtles arcade?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of things that you could just resurrect from the 80s and 90s. How about a whack-a-mole, but that's like a really big whack-a-mole?
Right.
I also think that now that I'm an adult, I'm better at teamwork, and so you can include some team-based games as well.
What is Skateland now called?
Skate City.
Skate City. You could go buy Skate City and turn it back to when it was Skateland. So it'd be awesome again.
Why would you go from a land to a city?
Yeah.
It's much smaller.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Also, is there a small bank inside there called Skate City Bank?
Yeah. That was pretty good.
Well, listen, the meat on the bone is there. We've taken care of it. Today's guest is Paul McDonald, not to be confused with Paul McDowell.
Yeah, not
which
that
would
guy.
be his ripoff version from the movie Coming to America.
Right.
He's your uncle.
He's my uncle. He's Uncle Baseball, as we call him in the fam.
Paul is a sports nut, specifically baseball.
Yep.
Knows tons of stats, lots of stuff. And he's also a Star Trek fanatic.
Oh, yeah. Like the two things that he really grabbed onto when he was a kid that he saw on TV all the time was baseball and the reruns of the original Star Trek show. And he's been obsessed with those things ever since. And he's made a career in broadcast doing sports radio. So he used to be in town here, and then he's been a few different stations around the North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota area, which is why you can kind of tell he's got a radio voice.
Yeah, he starts off like this, Paul McDonald. I'm talking about baseball. Not as schmarmy as that, but that's one time when I was in my real job doing radio, I tried to have a radio voice like that and say, hey, how's it going, everyone? We got a really great day going. And the people I was with, previous guests, Scotch, Noel Anderson, Britta Nelson,
They shut you down.
Stop being an idiot. Okay. Go back to my nasally Midwestern voice. Paul's interesting because there's nothing I could really throw at him that he could not handle. But what's more interesting is I was shocked at how much I knew about baseball.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're going to be surprised. And I wasn't sitting here Googling or anything like that. That was all stuff that came off the top of my head. Because when you get around someone who's as knowledgeable and as personable as Paul, it just unlocks sections of your brain.
And unfortunately, we didn't even get into doing any of his parlor tricks he can do with baseball knowledge. I mean, you can ask him any obscure question, and he can get you an answer almost off the top of his head about,
Like, who is the MVP of season
of this and this year of that team or whatever. He's got especially when it comes to Yankees and Twins, he's got a very, very deep knowledge. And same with Star Trek.
One thing I liked about a Star Trek conversation is we get into the J.J. Abrams Star Treks, and both you and he lit up with this. God, I hope we don't argue.
That was the one of the many cool things about my Uncle Paul is that, so he comes, he's my mom's brother. He's the youngest of 9 children. And so he was the closest in age to us cousins as we were growing up. And even though he's into sports, he was the only uncle who was into something that wasn't sports, something nerdy that we could talk about. And so I always had that connection with him. And he's got this, he instilled a love in me for poop and fart jokes. That was Uncle Paul's purview growing up.
You always need one good uncle to get the
Absolutely.
poop and fart
and I've
jokes.
got a bunch of good uncles that are into that, and Uncle Paul was at the tip of the spear when it came to poop and fart jokes.
Okay, well, let's get into this one. Also, a note for you listeners outside of the Fargo-Moorhead area. You probably don't understand why it's so funny that I said Skate City Bank. There's a very popular chain of banks in our town called Gate City Bank, Gate. So I was playing that off with Skate City Bank.
You got
Gate
a big
City.
laugh out of me when
I
you
did.
said it. I don't know if you needed to go to explain.
Well,
that.
we have listeners all over the globe
That's
who
true.
probably are like, why is that funny?
That's true. At this point, we still are waiting on Wyoming and New Hampshire in the U.S. to download JJ Meets World, but we are in every other state.
Wyoming, the number one Google during the holiday season of 2018 in Wyoming was Kardashian Christmas card. So reference to Kardashian Christmas card now will get popular in Wyoming. While you guys are getting ready for this episode, go and use the bathroom, make yourself a little snack, maybe pour yourself an adult beverage.
You can do all those things while listening to the episode.
Oh, you
too.
can?
That's true.
Oh, man. Well, tell your Alexa to keep this thing piped in. And also tell Alexa, and maybe this will work. Alexa, go to patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate. Now, Alexa.
JJ Meets World.
Uncle Paul, as I've been introduced to you, sir. I'm going to call you Punkle, if that's all right.
It's not as good as Baggies, but it'll work.
Yeah. Do you ever have a nickname? Do you have a nickname people call you?
Some people call me PMAC. I've been called Uncle Baseball. I've been called things that you could say on the air right now, but we won't. But those
nice.
are the PMAC is what I'm called mostly in the work area, in the work world.
Me and all the cousins have been calling him Uncle Baseball forever, though.
Yeah.
I mean, because even though all of my uncles are into athletics on some level, no one comes close to the knowledge base and fandom, especially when it comes to baseball, that this gentleman has right here. And in fact, it's been like a parlor game for a long time, asking him, just deep cut questions
Yeah.
of people's stats and stuff from
I was a lot of lifelines
yeah.
when it came to Trivial Pursuit.
So, why baseball? Why baseball?
That's just, I love all sports, but that's just my passion. I played it. I've coached it. I love the history of it. That's probably why baseball's the biggest thing right there.
And it's America's pastime.
And it's America's pastime.
Who doesn't love it?
And
right?
I'm a stat freak, and baseball has more stats in it than you could shake a stick at. So
who's your team?
Well, Twins are number one, but the Yankees are a very close second. If they're not playing one another, it's the Yankees. If they are playing one another, it's the Twins.
That is a very interesting combination of teams
It
right
is,
there.
yes.
I dig that.
Yeah, and people will say, "Oh, how long have you been a fan?" They would think, "Okay, 20 years since the Jeter era started." It's been about 42 years.
Oh, wow.
My first game was a Yankee-Twins game in 1976, and then even before that, because I'm the history of the sport, or the history of a fan of the history of baseball. you read books, and regardless of what you think about the team, you can't help but appreciate what the organization has done for the sport.
The movie 61 that
Yeah.
Billy Crystal made
Yeah.
about Roger Maris is one of my all-time favorite movies. I think that movie it captures that moment
Yeah.
in the history of baseball so well.
Yeah.
And how the commission reacted to things. And in your opinion, are we at a point where baseball needs to change it all as a sport? You know, you look at the NFL, and the NFL's had some pretty major changes over the last couple of years,
Right.
to try and not only make their pocketbooks a little heavier, but also just to kind of regulate the sport a little bit more. You know, Theodore Roosevelt at one point said that he was going to ban football because of how many head injuries that were taking
Really?
place.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the most violent sport that he had ever seen.
I wonder what you think of
And-
UFC.
Even that, or football today. I mean, back
Sure,
in the day,
yeah.
they were playing on all grass fields, and their helmets, leather
helmets
right?
with no face masks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you think baseball's at a point of where they're looking at changing things, or are they pretty much good to go for their course?
They're good to go. Obviously, the biggest thing is the steroid use. I mean, it happens in sports. I don't care what sport you're talking about. But the steroid use, that's why guys like Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire are not in the Hall of Fame. In my mind, you use steroids, you cheated. Roger Maris and Hank Aaron are still the home run kings. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds are not. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that. People argue with me about that, but that is my feeling. You look at Roger Maris, he was a scrawny kid from Fargo. And he still hit 61 home runs because he knew how to hit the ball, and he had the quick wrist. Same with Hank Aaron. He was not a big man, but he knew how to hit the ball. Babe Ruth wasn't that big. He had spindly legs and a beer gut, but he hit the ball. He knew how to hit the ball. But nowadays, if you don't look like a UFC fighter, or you don't
Right.
look like Hulk Hogan, you look at like Mark McGwire. His rookie year, he was a scrawny kid. By the time he retired, he was huge. So that's what I think baseball needs to do is watch, and they're doing it. They are taking steps to do that. The only other thing I see that baseball needs to do to clean up the sport is they got to do something about umpires. I know it's a tough thing. Refereeing, whether it's baseball, football, hockey, everything is faster now because the athletes are so much bigger, stronger, faster. The Bionic Man, $6 Million Man intro. Something needs to be done when it calls the balls and strikes. They all have their own strike zone. Well, last time I checked, there is only one strike zone. If you look in the rule book, there is only one strike zone, but they say, well, each umpire has their own strike zone. Okay, well, then something needs to be done about that.
Yeah, the interpretation to me takes it away from being a standardized game and turns it into something where, today I feel this.
Yeah. I don't like that pitcher, or I don't like that hitter, or this is a rookie, or this is a veteran, so they're going to get the call, they're not going to get the call.
That one felt kind of strike-ish to me. I'm going to call it a
I
strike.
think that was a strike, and besides, looks like it might rain, and I'm got a flight. Strike 3, you're out, let's get out of here. That's why they call them getaway days with umpires. It's, they got a flight to catch, so they're going to speed things up here.
So, here's a question. So a foul ball, if it lands on the line, is it considered foul or is it considered fair play?
It's a fair play.
It's a fair play. So it's got to be actually off of the line on
Yep.
the foul ball territory.
Yep.
Have you ever seen a game where that's caused like some confusion where
Oh,
some
heck
guy
yeah.
was like, "Oh, I'm not even going to bother running for this ball because
Yeah. They'll see it hooking and hooking and hooking and think, oh, it's going to go foul, so they'll stay in the batter's box. And then when they see it and lands, and you can, John McEnroe say the chalk flew in the air. That's why they chalk them now. You see the chalk go up, and you can tell that's a fair ball. It's like, oh, now I better run. By then, it's like, too late, Skippy. That double, you just stretch that double into a single. Well done.
So the Minnesota Twins, I grew up in the era where Kirby Puckett was just about the closest thing to a biblical character
Yeah.
that you could arrive
Yeah.
at. And I remember going to see him play at the Metrodome and just being in awe.
Yeah.
I saw him hit 2 home runs in one single game, and I was like, I'm living history right now.
Right.
And the Twins have always been pretty good about putting together these mythic players who become involved in not only the history of the Twins, but the history of Minnesota. I look at Joe Mauer, and listening to Joe Mauer's press conference brought a tear to my eye.
Ditto. Mine too.
What an amazing guy.
Yeah.
So what do you think Minnesota does differently that other ball clubs are not doing?
It's that small town thing. It's the Minnesota nice, if you will. It's just the small town atmosphere. I think that's one reason why players like to come here to play, even though they can't afford to bring the big name players. But there's less stress. It's Minnesota. It's Minneapolis. You don't have the gauging eye of New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago staring at you. It's small town Minnesota, small town America. That is the reason why. And I think that's why they say we want to do it the Twins way. They're not going to do it flashy. The Herb Carneal, who was a longtime broadcaster for the Minnesota Twins and one of my heroes, used to call himself a meat and potatoes guy. Nothing flashy. That's what the Twins are. They're meat and potatoes. They're not going to do anything that's going to wow you or make you have them on ESPN every single night. They just do it the right way, and I think that's why.
Well, who wouldn't love the guys next door, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of what it feels like sometimes when the Twins are playing.
Yeah.
And then you're right with the Yankees. You feel like you're playing New Yorkers, and you're ready. Someone's going to throw a beer can.
I went to a Phillies game like 2 years ago
in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Let's clarify.
And it was not like that.
Philadelphia fans are brutal.
They are insane.
And they're very knowledgeable. They love their sports, but they're brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, case in point, what happened last year after the Vikings and Eagles NFC Championship game. They were nasty. I had some friends that were there, and they're like, this is ridiculous. What, you people should be jailed. But that's just the way they are. They're so rabid. And, of course, they're alcohol-fueled.
Yep.
But they're so rabid about their sports. That's the way they
City of
get.
Philadelphia has to grease the light poles after big games because people like to climb the light poles.
Yeah.
So they have to grease them so you can't crawl up it.
There are a couple things I've wanted to forget in my life that I've seen on the internet, and recently someone showed me a video that someone had taken after the Eagles won the Super Bowl of some dude in Philadelphia celebrating on the streets, and there's a huge crowd around him, and what it is one of the horse cops had pooped, and he ate a piece of the horse. He ate a horse apple.
Yes.
And even saying it right now, it's making me just a little bit gaggy. And you know what's happening while you're watching, and you're like, well, there's no way. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Episode title.
And he's got a smile on his face.
Yes.
So, Paul, you've seen this clip then,
Yes,
right?
I have.
Yeah. Listen, I like the Vikings. But I'm not going to drink pee to celebrate a win.
Unless it's out of a horn.
Right.
I don't know, even out of a horn.
Not even out of a horn?
No. I mean, warm beer is as close as I'm going to get to drinking out of a horn like that.
Oh.
So give me some great moments in baseball, in your opinion, because I think that everyone's got different things, right? Depending on who your team is, depending where you grew up. I know people who say, just the feeling of walking into the old Yankee Stadium and sitting in the green seats, like that was better than any game you ever could see.
Yeah, I unfortunately have never been there. I did have a friend that went there on a baseball trip, took a picture, sent it to me. He's no longer my friend, and because I wish I'd ever stepped in it. But moments that I can think of. In historically, the 56-game hitting streak of Joe DiMaggio, I don't think you'll ever see that again. I don't think you'll ever see a person hit 400, and people argue with me about that. But that's because pitching is so much better now than it is and has and was. I don't think you'll ever see that. Those are a couple of them. Team-wise, like the Miracle Mets World Series in 1969, they were 7-year. They'd been a franchise for 7 years. They lost 120 games in 62, win the World Series 7 years later. Obviously, what the Twins have done in 87 and 91, winning their World Series, are two big moments for me. Those are the biggest ones just because they're historically fun or they're historically interesting. Are the biggest moments as far as I'm concerned. Even, the Cubs winning the World Series a couple of years ago, breaking a 100-plus year streak of not winning a World Series. Talk about a sports town that's starved for championships. That was one. Cleveland, even last year, I'm not a big NBA fan, but a couple years ago when that was the first championship they had seen in 50-some years. But
the
those
Red Sox World Series is something
the Red
that also
Sox
stands out
when
to
they
me.
broke the GOAT jinx, as they call it, and the Yankees were part of that. Those are the biggest moments as far as baseball, as far as I'm concerned. Those historical things that when you watch Cal Ripken's the consecutive game streak, you talk about bringing a tear to your eye. I have goosebumps and cried a little bit watching that game that he played, and he circles the crowd in Baltimore after he breaks Lou Gehrig's streak. Those are moments to me that will always go down in as far as the finest moments in baseball.
I hate when people compare baseball players today with the baseball players of yesterday, because the game has changed in every aspect. So even in 61, when they were talking about, Babe Ruth didn't have to play night games, and he wasn't traveling, 7,000 miles in a 2-week span to play these things. And so they're saying, well, you've got it easier. So, these, and then players 20 years later would say like, well, gosh, you weren't doing stuff, the things that are asked of us today, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the biggest changes in my mind is the technology they brought into baseball, where it used to be somebody who had a keen eye, and so you were watching those pitches and you said, the ball comes out of your hand just a little too soon. And now you've got high definition video playback where a computer's analyzing your pitch and it's telling you, no, release your pinky earlier than anything else. And they're just different games.
Yeah,
they're
they
just
are
different games. Yeah. And if you put together this amazing team of all the heaviest hitters of all time and the fastest runners, I think it would look like garbage because they all played a different version of baseball.
And Ted Williams used to say he could count the seams on a ball when it came out of a pitcher's hand. Now, that's being facetious a little bit, but that's what he meant. He could just see that ball so well. That's why he hit like he did. Players nowadays, I don't think they watch the rotation of the ball. I don't think they watch how it's released. They say they do, but I don't think they do. I think they know the pitcher. Okay, he's the curveball pitcher, so I'm probably going to get a curveball here. There's a guessing game in it. But you're right, and in any sport, but baseball in particular, the era is so different than it was. Babe Ruth and Roger Maris. Roger Maris had a 162-game schedule, and Babe Ruth did it in 154. But if you look at the stats, Roger Maris, I think, did it in less at-bats than Babe Ruth hit his 60 in less at-bats. And Babe Ruth was walked a lot because he had Lou Gehrig behind him in the batting order. Roger Maris wasn't walked that much because he had Mickey Mantle behind him, but then Mickey Mantle got hurt. And so they had to pitch to him. So he was getting good pitches. It is so different. And I kind of like to see what it looks like in 20 years from now, where baseball is at. Do we get rid of human element where the umpires are completely gone and it's now sensors at the bag or for the strike zone? So it's going to be it's going to be interesting with technology.
Well, who's the audience going to threaten to kill? After,
exactly. Who are they going to hang the bum? Who are they going to want to hang afterwards?
You kick some dirt at a PC or something.
Exactly.
Like that?
I'm going to screw up your camera lens. There we go.
Well, so to that end, some of my favorite aspects of baseball are kind of watching the cheats, the way you kind of up your odds. So the pitcher who kept a little Vaseline under his cap, or he had a little bit of sandpaper somewhere. The little things that people did that were definitely not allowed in the game, but also sort of like you kind of expect it to happen through that. So at one point, are they going to go forward and be like, listen, I'm going to upload a virus here that will keep this sensor like on our side, and they'll hack baseball.
Right.
We did a piece last year on my radio show about baseballs and how baseballs have been made over the last 100 years. And the differences in things like a modern day baseball made by machine is so much more uniform than something from 40, 50, 60 years ago. And when you'd hit that ball 40 or 50, 60 years ago, it would become that oblong shape after you hit it and it starts going off. But today's balls stay rounder as they're doing that, even though it's pretty much the same material that's inside. You've seen a
Yeah.
baseball cut in half, I'm sure, many times.
Yeah. I used to have, I don't think I have anymore, the core of what a baseball used to have. They used to have a little core inside, and then, of course, it's all thread. Remember The Natural, and then the movie in The Natural when he hits the home run and the ball just basically unwinds as it's heading to the outfield. That's the way they were used to be made, hand-stitched, by kids in Guadalajara. No, and so it was, the baseballs are more... See, that's why they call it the rabid baseball era. Because they're tighter and more uniform, they're going to fly off the bat more. That's one thing I would, I hope that they change. They don't have aluminum bats in baseball. High school baseball and college baseball should go to wood bats because they have they call BB core, and they are still aluminum-like or metal-like. But the ball doesn't come off as quickly. But still, I think they should go wood bats across the board.
I'm blanking on the name of it, but they make all the bats. The big bat.
Louisville Slugger?
Louisville, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I saw a documentary once where a baseball player, I don't know who he was, but he got access to they brought him into like the inner sanctum.
Yeah.
And they have this massive room with a copy of every bat they've ever made. And it was like he spent like 5 hours in this room just going and trying each bat and taking it out and like trying to swing it and stuff. And I didn't really think about the fact that there would actually be a ton of difference between bat styles and the wood that is made. Like at what point did I mean, I think of like scenes in movies, old timey ones where kids are playing stickball. Yeah. They're using like a broom handle or something.
Yeah.
When did we finally get sort of a standard baseball bat for the first time?
Oh, that would have been probably in when Louisville Slugger first, in the 20s and 30s.
Okay.
It's probably when we had the standard bat. Now you can have it made out of ash, maple, oak. Those are the three type trees that wood bats are made out of. Maple, I think, if I remember correctly, is the best because it's the strongest and they don't chip.
Okay.
They won't break as easily as the ash or as the oak will, or the oak. So yeah, I would say it was probably in the 20s or 30s is when we had the standardized bats, and and it's a preference of the player himself. They have the 34-inch bat or 32 ounce. Have different ounces. They have to still be regulation in size and length. Babe Ruth used an extremely long bat, and it had and what made his feet so good, it had a skinnier barrel than they do nowadays. Nowadays, those barrels are huge,
right.
But he had a little skinnier barrel because it was comfortable for him. It was easier to swing.
It's almost like we're talking about lightsabers here.
It is.
Darth Vader's lightsaber looks like this,
but
Luke Skywalker had this
Skywalker,
kind of
yes.
blah, 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 blah.
It's very rare, too, where you find a sport where there is some choice in what you're using. Golf, I think, is obviously something where you can refine exactly the tool that you want to use. Baseball's another, but basketball, football, everyone's using the same exact, weapon of choice in there. So let's swap this over real quick because I also understand that you're a big fan of Star Trek.
Yes.
So that's exciting to me.
JJ always asks, what should I know to talk about this next person? I go, baseball, Star Trek.
Yeah, baseball and Star
Those
Trek.
two topics.
Yeah.
So-
or that third one we talked about. We'll bring that another time.
That's for the after hours.
Yeah, that'll be later on. Yes.
Full disclosure, I know a lot about Star Trek, but it's based off of what I know from pop culture. Mm-hmm. In fact, I tell people my favorite Star Trek movie is Voyage Home. I find it to be campy and wonderful.
Right.
I think it's just a ton of fun. The
I love
idea
it
of like
too.
them
Yeah.
bringing
I
a
love it
whale.
too.
Yeah.
I think it's one of Scotty. Scotty gets to steal the scene when he's using that old computer.
Right.
And how quaint.
Yeah. Hello, computer.
Yeah, and he picks up
Picks
the
up the
mouse.
mouse.
So, love of Star Trek. Where does that come from?
I think just watching it.
Yeah.
It was already in reruns by the time I started watching it because I was 3 years old during its 3-year runs. I don't think I watched it when it was first on. It was just watching it in reruns, and what kid didn't want to be in a spaceship and going to different planets and seeing green people and people with pointed ears. I think that's what started, and then I just you start reading about it, and it's like, well, this is interesting, and this is interesting, and how when you get older, you're thinking, is the future going to be like that? How close is, and you look at it, how close did they come to a lot of things? The communicator, look at your cell phones.
I remember seeing there's scenes with Picard where he's basically got an iPad in his hand.
Exactly.
And it doesn't look nearly as nice as our iPad.
No. But that's probably where they got the idea. It's like, they had to.
Well, and I think you're right. I think a lot of fans of that show watched it and said, well, yeah, we should have something like this.
I mean, there's a space shuttle that was named Enterprise. I mean, like there's so many people who have gotten into actual space industry who started as fans of Star Trek.
That's why they got into it.
That's why they got into it. I want to do that. I want to go and do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I love the approach that Star Trek takes to of a naval setup.
Yeah.
Because these are ships in space.
Yeah.
And so I always thought that was a great idea. And to have, Starfleet is such just an amazing concept here. So do you have a favorite character?
It probably has to go series by series.
Yeah, because exactly, I would have to go to all 4 or 5 series before I would say, yeah, that's the one that I have. Obviously, a lot of guys my age, they like Kirk. Kirk was the epitome of a Starfleet captain, and
he was a stud every time he took his shirt off.
Exactly, and Picard not so much. And now comes the conversation, and I think you and I have had this before: Picard or Kirk.
See, yeah, I'm Picard all the way, and of course, Next Generation was on TV when I was growing up, so that was my first introduction to it. But we had the movies too, and so I've only seen a few episodes of the original show, but I've seen all the movies multiple times, and I've always been able to pick Uncle Paul's brain about the old shows. And I think when it comes to Picard versus Kirk, for me, it comes down to captaining style. I like the fact that Picard, when they've got a thing to do and they don't know what to do, he brings all of his leaders into the ready room and he sits and he listens to their suggestions and he takes their advice and then he plots a course, versus everything always seemed to rely on Kirk, on his intuition, on his gut feeling. And there was always a great place for that. And I always felt that the Kirk-Picard meeting that we got in Generations kind of missed the mark a bit. I wanted a whole movie with these two guys, and seeing their different styles and how they were each stronger than the other in one aspect and probably weaker than the other in the other aspect. It also helps the fact that Patrick Stewart still looks like Jean-Luc Picard, like as he did in '89.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Shatner's a bit different looking.
He looked a little different looking. Yeah, the toupee helps. But when I was driving here, I was thinking, okay, I was just thinking of questions I was going to get asked, and I figured that one would come up. And as we were talking about sports in different eras, they were, they're captains too in different eras, so they had different styles. And not just not with Starfleet, but think about the era when William Shatner was Captain Kirk. You had the cowboy mentality, the ride in, and that's what Gene Roddenberry, that's how he sold his idea to NBC. This is going to be a wagon train to the stars. This will be like a Western. Instead of 6-shooters, we got phasers. Instead of wagons, we got starships. So, I mean, Kirk was in the era where, also free love. So, of course, he's going to find every single green woman he could. And, I'm surprised things didn't fall off the man.
I'm surprised he doesn't have, green babies all over the galaxy.
Exactly. Well, he probably does. We just never showed it.
He's the Eddie Murphy of the galaxy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just like, you talk about him taking off his shirt. How many times did he rip his uniform, or his stuntman did? But Picard was more of a cerebral captain. He did it with rationale, and like you said, he brought all of his lieutenants and all of his chiefs of staff in. I would say, bottom line, Kirk would be my favorite character.
Okay.
That I even try to walk like William Shatner did every once in a while. I'll just try to get to that swagger going, and, especially if I'm around a green woman, I will try that and see if it works.
You see, with Next Generation, though, I watch Next Generation now still and go, I want to live on that starship at that time in its history.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with that crew. I want to go to 10 Forward and ask Guinan for advice. I want to go to the holodeck, right? They didn't have holodecks in the original series. So I still want that place to be real because it's so real in my head.
Right.
And that's why, as a Star Trek fan, I am looking forward to the series where it's another 100 or 1,000 years in the future. I want to see the new frontiers that they're finding. I love the spirit of exploration and the spirit of finding new things and new cultures. And I think Star Trek is the kind of series that is able to do things that Star Wars can't. You know, Star Wars is science fantasy, right? It's very much good versus evil, swords and sorcery, action sequences and things like that. And I have nothing against Star Wars. I love Star Wars. The thing about Star Trek that I like is that it is about deconstructing the issues we face today using futurism, our anxieties, our concerns, and our hope for the future. Star Trek: The Next Generation paints a very hopeful, utopian future. The world of Earth is one without scarcity. You don't need to have a job you hate because money isn't really a thing because you've got replicators and you can devote your life to the thing you're passionate about, and their society has become the better for that. And whereas Star Wars is very, it's the war is in the title, right? It's about conflict and it's about battle sequences and stuff. And even Star Trek has gone in certain series, they'd go in that direction, but they still were able to maintain a spirit of something else. So Deep Space Nine has the Cardassian War in and out of it. Like it's pretty much framed by it.
Right.
And Captain Sisko is very much a wartime captain. Like he is someone who you see him like go in and go, listen, I will burn your fucking planet to the ground if I have to, if you're going to go do this to us.
Yeah.
Whereas Picard was, like you said, very cerebral, very peacekeeping.
More of a diplomat.
Much more of a diplomat.
Yeah. And one thing I thought of, too, is I wish our society today had something like the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
It would be absolutely ideal in the society today if we had something like the Prime Directive that they had, that we do not interfere with other cultures and other races. They want to blow themselves up, let them do it. Now, if it starts to trickle in, it's going to, come into our backyard. Okay, now we have an issue.
Right.
That's why Roosevelt didn't want to get into World War II. Let them figure it out. We're not going into but then they came into Hawaii. They came to Pearl Harbor. All right. You just flipped us off. You're toast now. We're coming.
But what's so interesting about Star Trek too is in First Contact, where the Vulcans decide, okay, let's talk to these guys. And it's because they create warp drive capability. And because of that one technical invention, they seem to think, well, you're ready for this now.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, and I'm not even thinking about other countries on this planet, as we look out into the stars, is there anyone looking back at us going, you'll find out about us once you've achieved a certain level.
Yep.
So what is that level? What would that level have to be? And I cannot stop thinking about that. I love thinking about what is it that's out there that we'll never even be able to see because we're too far away for the light to even reach us.
Right.
I think that is so fascinating, and I would love to see a Star Trek series 1,000 years in the future where they go, all right, so now we're able to easily get out of our galaxy, right? And, the Borg were from a distant galaxy, right? And Voyager gets shot out to one where they'd never been before. But let's say they get to the point where they find out, like, wow, life is actually incredibly rare once you leave this cluster of galaxies. And they start to feel the same thing again. Like, is there anyone out there?
Yeah.
Like, we feel like a galactic community now that sees each other and talks to each other all the time, but we can't find examples of life 20 galaxies over that way.
Right.
And maybe they have the ability to pierce the cosmic microwave background, which we can't see past right now because that's a plasma, and light doesn't pass through a plasma. It's the farthest we can see out into space. Beyond whatever is back there, we cannot see it. We'll probably never see it just because of the lengths of physics. I want to see a Star Trek show where everyone's quarters is a holodeck. So you get to create the kind of room you want to be. Maybe it's a limited holodeck, so it only takes so much power. But it seems like holodeck technology is something you'd want to implement into your bridge, right? So that if you're like, all right, we need to go into battle mode, and the holodeck changes everything on the bridge, so now you've got a different interface. I want to see Klingons. Like, what is their culture like in 1,000 years? After they've been ravaged by war, have they had a progressive wing? I could go on forever.
Yes, you could.
This is the Star Trek show that I want to see so bad, and I want it to have the same feeling of hope and discovery and imagination and exploration that Next Generation had.
The one thing I take away from Star Trek, which is different than what I think we're progressing towards right now, is we send so many, for lack of a better word, robots out there. And so by the time Next Generation comes around and you've got a character like Data, and you think, well, why don't you just have a whole ship full of these cyborgs that you can send out there, and that way we don't have to risk human life.
Yeah.
But what Star Trek does so well is they say, no. Human interaction and thought is the true exploration. So Data could come and look at all the rocks and bring back all this information, but at no point were they like, well, did you ever look up in the sky and just, notice anything that, that the things that the human brain pick up that a machine would not. And that's what I found to be so neat as they progressed on, because I think it would have been easy to just explain away a bunch of stuff like, Deep Space Nine. Well, it's just a bunch of robots out there, so we don't really need to worry about it.
There's actually a huge episode of Next Generation, my favorite episode, where a scientist from Starfleet comes to the Enterprise, and he wants to basically decommission Data.
Measure of a Man is the name of the episode.
Take his body back, learn how he was made, reverse engineer him, because his creator had died, and the secrets of how to build Data were sort of lost with him. He wanted to basically take Data apart, reverse engineer, make a fleet of Datas, and he wanted to do it without Data's permission. He wanted to be able to treat Data as the property of Starfleet versus a life form. And so they had to have basically a trial where Riker, who played the devil's advocate and worked on the side of the science officer from Starfleet, and then Picard, who was Data's lawyer. And Picard gives one of the most beautiful speeches you could ever think about that encapsulates human rights and the rights of sentient beings. And he ends it by saying, the mission of Starfleet is to seek out life in all of its forms. Well, there it sits. And he points right at Data. And Data gets given the status of being a life form. And Data was such a great tool for Star Trek to explore the human condition, because he's an outsider who doesn't know the human condition. He's trying to become more human. And as we now careen into this era of artificial intelligence, I think it's so fascinating to look at how the people in the 80s and 90s thought about how artificial intelligence would manifest itself and how different it actually is now. So like the Data of the future, the idea of a robot trying to learn what emotions are might just be obsolete, because they find experiences of being that a human would never understand. And I just think Data is my second favorite character in Next Generation. It's Geordie LaForge, because I always liked his visor as a kid.
Right.
And I watched Reading Rainbow.
And I love the fact, too, that in Star Trek, they touch on facts that, like, we've got all this advanced technology, but people still go blind.
Yeah.
Right.
They deal with human problems, and they show how the future of that, may be challenged in a way. I can't remember what movie it is, but there's a Klingon who's like lost an arm in it, and so it's like they can't just grow a new arm,
right?
They're the things that you see.
That's the Undiscovered Country.
Yep.
Is it?
It's the last one with the original, and he got shot, and that's how he lost his arm.
But also, I would assume that a Klingon, even if they had the ability to regrow an arm, wouldn't, because that's a badge of honor.
That's a sign of that's a badge of courage or a badge of honor.
You fought and lost a limb because you're still here.
Undiscovered Country is the one where
Christopher Plummer.
they make the really great joke about your nuts aren't always between your legs, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Not everyone wears their genitals in the same place.
That's it,
Iman says that to Kirk when he gets him in the knees. I'm glad his thing had, that's not where they keep genitals or spuds. But think about that. They're in your knees. I would probably pull a hamstring if I
think of all the times I've like fallen down on my knees and just like, no, brother, no way.
Man.
Was there a reason that Sulu was relegated to like a small cameo as a ship captain on another ship? Because he's not with the crew in most of Undiscovered Country, right? They speak to him through a screen because he's captaining his own vessel.
Right, and then he's at the end of the movie when I think they also wanted. Well, they knew that they need to make him a captain. I mean, he had to become a captain because he was a helmsman and everything, and that was that whole equal opportunity.
Okay,
we're going to make this Asian a captain of a science vessel, and. So he's at the end of the movie, the end of Undiscovered Country, when he beams down and they capture everybody. And you notice they wanted to have the original 7 in a scene together because they knew this was it. Yep. This was the last movie. I think that's why they made sure Sulu was there, because then at the end of the movie when everybody's up applauding, you've got everybody except Uhura. I don't think she might be down there. They're all together.
Okay.
And so that's an interesting fact that that they made him a kind of a lesser character. But I think, too, at the time, George Takei was kind of ready to be done with that.
I wondered if there was something behind the scenes, like, I don't want to commit to a 4-month shoot.
Yeah,
I'd rather do
a handful of scenes, come in and save the day or help save the day, and I'll be good with that.
And it's a nice progression of the character. It shows that these people weren't all going to serve on the same ship together for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And so I'm curious to know, what do you think of the newer movies that have come out?
I was just thinking about that. I love the J.J. Abrams reboots.
Oh, thank God, because I do too. And if you were going to say no, I'd be like, I don't know where I'm going to go with the rest of this.
It took me some time because he said in several interviews that I've read and heard, he said, now, you old farts, forget about what you know from the original series. This is a different timeline. Chekhov never knew Pike in the old series. And he obviously, he's technically served with him.
Spock never had a relationship with Uhura.
No. However, I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
That's why I like that they made the Sulu character gay.
Right.
I love that because, and I think George Takei, he applauded J.J. Abrams for doing that.
No, he didn't.
I had heard that he had.
So this is the first he actually came out hard against it, but his arguments against it didn't make sense. And I remember Simon Pegg going, yeah, we talked to him about it, and we were surprised he was so against it, but we believed in it so much that we went with it. I mean, what a great way, not just to introduce that about the character, but also to sort of pay tribute to the trials and tribulations that not just George Takei, but DeForest Kelley went through, being a gay man in Hollywood at that time.
Right.
And I mean, George Takei, he wasn't just gay, he was Asian.
Yeah.
Right? You're double damned at that point. He's 0 for 2 at that point.
Time. Yep.
And then also, I always like it in shows whenever you get a glimpse of a character's inner life or their personal life that you don't get to spend time with them. Right? He's on this ship. You never think about the fact that, does he have a family? Yeah. We always sort of assume that all these characters are just single people who can't afford to have a family because they're working on a starship. So I love that moment, seeing his family and seeing him be sort of whole.
And back on Generations, in the movie Generations, his daughter is the helmsman of Enterprise D. That's or whatever number E, whatever part of the alphabet we were. Right. And Kirk said, where did he find time to have a family? And Scotty said, well, you always taught us if something's important, you find the time.
Right.
And so that's what I like. Now, to my point about Uhura and Spock, if you remember in the old series, well, you may not, but in the old series, Uhura and Kirk kissed in the episode Plato's Stepchildren, the first interracial kiss on television. It was supposed to be her and Spock.
Really?
Her and Leonard Nimoy were supposed to do that.
Interesting.
But then they changed it.
Okay.
And they thought, okay, now it's an alien, so let's change it, and her and Kirk will have it.
Humans.
Yeah, and then they weren't actually supposed to kiss.
Okay.
In rehearsals, I just read this recently in an interview that Nichelle Nichols did. They weren't supposed to actually kiss, but they did just through the many takes. And Roddenberry says, "Let's take that take. That's the one where they actually do." Lock lips and awesome. Use that one, and so that one, and I think that's where J.J. Abrams came up with this relationship. Okay, it was kind of supposed to happen here,
right?
So let's make it happen here.
I know that Michelle Nichols has told in multiple occasions the story of Martin Luther King Jr. telling her, "You have to stay on this show," because she wasn't going to do it, and he's like, "You have to be on it. You're the first woman of color that is being treated as an equal in this thing, and it's really important of young women of color to see it." And Whoopi Goldberg got into Star Trek because she saw Uhura and said, that's a lady who looks just like me, and she's on TV.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Star Trek has always been at like the forefront of moving us in that direction, which I've really liked. I also remember that the first season of Next Generation, a lot of the male crew members were wearing skirts.
Yes.
So, like, you could wear either a pantsuit or a skirt suit, and then it ends up becoming just pantsuits for everyone after a bit.
Right.
But they would show men in skirts, and it was just like, yeah, we don't have the same hang-ups on
dressing,
on gender identity, like that you have to be a certain way. Right. There's even an episode where Riker, who loves to just he's basically the Kirk. He's got the Kirk sex drive.
Yeah, he does. He does.
And he meets an alien who they don't have gender, I believe.
Yes, right,
The
exactly.
alien was their gender just didn't come into it.
Right.
And he still fell in love with this
And
alien.
she fell in love with him, and then she got in trouble doing it,
Right.
Because that was against her culture.
Right. And we can say she and her because the actor was female.
Yeah.
But like in the world of the show, it was just like, we just have a race that doesn't have that concept. And I thought that's really interesting because they're doing such a great job in the show of exploring, like I said, the human condition. So yeah, what if you're an alien whose genitals are in their knees? What if you're blue, or you've got this, or you've got that, and how does that fit into your life? I love that show. I could talk about it for days.
Yeah.
I've always heard this rumor that J.J. Abrams was being interviewed years ago when it was announced that he was going to take the helm of this new Star Trek movie, which from the get-go was like, oh, God, just let this series go.
Yeah.
Let 20 years pass so that we can come at it with fresh eyes. And I was shocked at how much I enjoyed what he did with that story because to me it said, listen, I'm not saying that anything else in this thing was awful. I'm saying this is an entirely new story with these characters that still pays homage to so there are people who are popping up that you're like, oh my God, I know that character.
Yeah.
But now that Kirk is kind of a dick because he had a bad childhood.
Yeah.
And it is interesting how it's the butterfly effect of that galaxy and like how little things like that change. But J.J. Abrams was being interviewed and they said, what's your favorite Star Trek movie? And he said Galaxy Quest. Have you seen the movie Galaxy Quest?
Yes, I have. Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver. And
I find
Alan
that
Rickman.
to
Alan
be
Rickman.
an amazing love letter to Star Trek because they play on all the great parts of the television series. And I love the idea of like, well, what if? What if you actually took all of the crew of the Starship Enterprise and put him onto a spaceship just to see what would happen? And the fact that Alan Rickman wears his prosthetic head through the whole thing, or the fact that Sigourney Weaver, like her role on the old show was like, computer, are there any more beryllium spheres on board? And she goes, I've got one job on this whole thing, and that's what I'm going to do. I found that to be really clever, and I feel like he took a little bit of that tongue-in-cheek and brought it into his series, and I have really, really enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. And the third one is one of those movies where it just kind of can get shoehorned in anywhere. It's like the Voyage Home a little bit,
right?
Where it does.
That's our favorite one, though.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
I love that movie. That's the best of the three because it's the most like the Star Trek.
Yes, it is.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
It is.
Because you don't need to be invested in some long story or a history.
Yep.
You don't need to visit 5 Wikipedia pages to understand what's going on. I also really love the way they brought in contemporary music from our culture into it as like a part of it. I really dug that.
Yeah. They do these really, like, it was James Wan, I think, is the director who just directed the new Aquaman movie. It's coming out. And I was like, I got to know more about this guy because as I was watching it, I watched it actually a few years after it even had come out. So I was watching it at home. And I just remember like these just beautiful shots of the ship and like, they did a really great job of giving you like a spatial understanding of where things are in the ship. And like there'd be a shot where people would be fighting and then they start running down a corridor and the camera would pan out and then up the side of the ship and this other stuff. They just these absolutely beautiful moments where the first like 20 minutes is them just going through their usual routine. And I thought, man, I actually would love like an HBO series or something where you get this level of detail and it's just every day on the Enterprise. It's just, what is it like living out here? And they did stuff. He did stuff that Abrams didn't do, and Abrams wasn't able to do because he had light flares in the way all the time, and these amazing shots. So I do prefer the third Star Trek.
Didn't
movie.
Simon Pegg write
Yep,
the third one too? Yeah.
I will say this though, they made a mistake which I see in Star Trek movies from time to time, which is why do you pick a great actor and then bury them under so much makeup that you can't see them emote anything? And I think that's what happened in the third one for me, is I couldn't really connect with the villain because he's trying so hard to push his lips out to form words. Versus in the first two of the Abrams series, they're relatively just small prosthetics that they're putting on. Benedict doesn't.
I didn't know Idris Elba was in the movie until I started watching it.
Right.
And then in like the first scene, I was like, God, this guy reminds me of Idris Elba for some reason. And then when it revealed like later on, it blew my mind. I was like, it is Idris Elba. Oh my goodness. What the hell?
Do you have a favorite movie just of everything? Like,
out of all, we talked about the third one, but as far as I think I have a favorite in each group. I loved The Wrath of Khan. Mm-hmm. Because that was the best of those
it's
six.
held up as like The Empire Strikes Back, basically.
It was. I know a lot of people say, sequels sometimes fail miserably and you should stop at one. But that one was better than one. Way better.
Oh, yeah. Ricardo Montalban, I think, crushes that role in a way where they created a villain that you actually identified with and you felt bad for.
Right. And he took it from what he did in the original Space Seed and just augmented it with this one. And so I think I would say the Wrath of Khan. That's why when I really had trouble with Cumberbatch being Khan. I had trouble with that.
The reveal of it too seemed sort of like
okay, well, that's a little pretty non whatever. It just I wasn't thrilled with that, the way that they did that. Not saying it had to be of an Indian or of anything like that. I just wasn't a big fan of Cumberbatch being Khan. It didn't hit me very well.
My only really big complaint about the Kelvin timeline are the lack of Klingons we get. There's a little bit of Klingon in 2, right? That initial fight scene,
right?
But like I really was hoping that the third Star Trek would be their like conflict with the Klingon is really starting to, or the Klingons are now becoming part of the Federation,
right?
Well, I can't remember at what point in the timeline that happens in the original timeline. Is that it's between the original series and Next Generation,
that
right?
They signed the treaty, and because as you know, with Undiscovered Country, their species was basically going to be dead in 50 years because of the explosion, and so I think it was somewhere in that 80-year gap that they became allies.
And isn't that one like sort of about the Cold War?
Basically, yes, it is.
Kirk is like, I don't want to help them. They're our enemies.
They're Klingons. I'm not supposed to like them. People like me are gonna have a tough time getting past this. General Chang, Christopher Plummer, was the same way. He was an old Cold War warrior, and he was gonna have a tough time being nice with humans. And see that it seems like every single Star Trek movie made has a message, some kind of a message about society, and that one was, Cold War's over, people. We're all one big happy. Let's get rid of this.
Also, we have like a fully fleshed out Klingon language.
Yes,
I mean you could speak if you knew Klingon. There's a language you could totally use.
Yeah,
I love the Klingon dictionary and looking through it and finding that there are words for everything. The works of Shakespeare have been interpreted into Klingon.
Mm-hmm. People have been married by pastors speaking Klingon.
Yep.
Star Trek as an overarching series has permeated every aspect of not only popular culture, but you'd be hard-pressed to find someone on this planet that if you said the word Star Trek, they didn't have something that they could muster in their mind. Now, they may confuse it with Star Wars, and I totally understand. You played outside as a kid. I get it.
Yeah, Babylon 5 people can just go to hell.
Yeah.
You just go to hell. We don't want to. Don't listen to this. We're not talking about Babylon 5.
What was the one that Jim Henson provided puppets for? There was a sci-fi series.
I don't know.
Wish I could think of the name
was
of
it.
Was
it a space, like a space?
Yeah, and it was human beings, but like some of the aliens were puppets. Oh, I wish I could think of what it was. It was something. Obviously, every sci-fi series has diehard passionate folks for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you collect any of the Star Trek stuff? Do you have a series of lead-based paint glasses
that I chew on from now and again? No, I don't have a lot of the. I have some figurines. I'm mostly books and novels. That's what I have the most of. I have books, novels. I do have, like I said, not action figures. They're just figurines. Christmas decorations. I got about a dozen that are ornaments, Christmas ornaments.
You still have your whole VHS collection, don't you?
And I have. Remember VHS? This is what you had, before we got CDs. But I have 52 of the original episodes on VHS, and the first 2 seasons of Next Generation. Then I stopped stopped doing it.
No,
but
were you like getting them through like a catalog or something?
Columbia House. Remember when Columbia House was such a big
Yeah.
thing?
Oh, okay.
Columbia House did this, and that's when I was a member, and that's when I was doing it. Well, then I got poor and couldn't pay the $19.95 for every time.
The fifth one didn't cost a penny every time?
Yeah, so yes, it didn't cost a penny, but the shipping handling was $40. So yeah, I've got all 6 of the original movies from the original because they came in a nice little box. When you put them together, they show the Enterprise. So I do collect some things. I have a Monopoly game.
Oh,
That's a Star Trek Next Generation Monopoly game
that's fun.
that has never been opened.
JJ's a Monopoly fan.
Oh,
That has
never been
opened. Yes, call me Sheldon Cooper.
Oh,
I wonder
boy.
if you're it's in the previous recording we did today. JJ laid out a whole strategy how to win Monopoly. I wonder how much of that translates into like the Star Trek game.
Yeah, I bet Second Street works just the same way because all they do is just
Change the names.
take words out
yeah.
and swap stuff out.
Right, and I have a baseball Monopoly too.
Oh, yeah? So are they all the parks? Is that the properties? Like, are they the ballparks?
Yeah, but I don't know. I've never opened it. That too is still in the
You've never
wrapping.
even looked at like pictures online of like, ooh, look at that.
No, maybe I want to. I'm trying to savor those for the day that I really need money.
Be like, come on, eBay,
Come on,
$5. What?
Never been
No.
opened.
So, do these two loves ever coincide at all? Like, do you ever go out to Star Trek night at the ballpark or anything?
I
like
never
that?
have, which is amazing that I've never done that kind of thing. Gone out to Star Trek night or Star Wars night. I've never done that. I've never been to a convention.
You're just a fan.
I'm just a fan.
That's
I'm-
awesome.
Yeah, I'm just a fan. I'm not.
I was gonna say you don't smell like a basement, so
Well, that's good. That's good because
Well, you have to do baseball outside usually. So
yeah,
he's getting a
baseball
lot
has
of
to be done
outdoor stuff.
outside. I do have a tunic, a uniform, and actually, before my mother passed away, I wanted her to actually make me a Star Trek uniform because I have the pattern for it in a Starfleet manual book that I have. But that never I'll have to find somebody that can
Yeah.
sew and make me one.
Yeah, I have a Next Generation outfit that was a Picard outfit, and I took a Pip out to be Riker because I went as Riker and Matt Burkholder went as Captain Picard. But it was like a cheapo vinyl one you can buy online. It was
Right.
probably like $30 or something like that.
Well, see, from the nose up, you're Picard. From the nose down, you're Riker.
Right. At the
So
time,
you're-
I had a full head of hair.
Did you?
But I wasn't tall enough to step over the backs of chairs.
Oh, okay.
Which is an amazing supercut that was made of every time Riker
never
sits
seen
down,
that.
he can't sit down normally. He has to step over
Yep,
everything.
leg over chair.
Do you find it interesting that most of the people from the Star Trek series become so associated with their characters that they can't go on and do other things outside of it? With the exception of, you take like a Patrick Stewart. Obviously, he's forged his own path in many
Yeah.
ways. But a lot of those original cast members didn't get an opportunity to really do anything else because they were always Sulu or...
Right?
And if it wasn't for those roles, though, they wouldn't have the lives that they had.
Correct.
Too.
Sure.
And a lot of them have said, I resented it at first. As I look back, boy, if it wasn't for Star Trek, I wouldn't have this beautiful house. I wouldn't have what I have. You think about it. DeForest Kelley was an actor famous before he did Star Trek. William Shatner was kind of known at the time, but what else has Nichelle Nichols done? Mm-hmm. Not much. What else has
Although
George Takei done?
she's done a lot of great charitable work.
Right, very
And
much.
As far as like performance
But
career.
as far as performances,
right.
yeah.
And so to me, I kind of think like, well, maybe you're shoehorned into this, but it really gives you an audience. It gives
Yeah.
you people who are going to listen to you. So if you decide to devote your life to charitable works, you've got the ultimate calling card, right?
Yeah, you've got a great platform.
Ultimate calling card.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the original series they didn't have residuals built into deals, so that the original cast actually like going to conventions was a way that they had to supplement their income because they weren't getting anything after the fact, which changed after that.
Right.
So
That
Yeah.
might have been the reason why
Next
it
Generation
changed.
cast is sitting pretty.
Yeah.
Well, and as they cast the show going on, it becomes something brand new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you take like, is it Kate Mulgrew? Is that her last name?
Yep.
So when she's approached for an audition and she accepts this role, your life has changed for good or for bad.
Yeah.
It is changed. And so anytime anyone is ever on that show for more than a 2-episode arc, it is going to change what you're doing. Rainn Wilson, 15 years ago, was the top comedian in the world, and they made 5 really horrible movies with him back to back, and nothing worked out. But now, not only do people want to meet Dwight, but he's getting all of these other con offers now that he's involved in a Star Trek series. Do you watch the new series that's on, the new CBS series?
I saw the very first one because it was actually on CBS, the first episode, before it went only on online. But I have not seen the rest of it.
I have not either. And so I don't hear people saying one thing or the other about it.
Yeah.
I've heard mixed, like any reaction from a fellow Star Trek fan has either been overwhelmingly negative or positive. And a part of it is that, and it's sort of confusing because they're actually doing some confusing stuff with the timelines now where they might be trying to collide the 2 timelines into one and create a new timeline, which I'm not super happy about because I don't like them wiping out canon. You know, I'm cool with them having a separate timeline for new canon. That makes total sense. But wiping out the canon from before, I don't like. So it depends on how they do it. But the Klingons in Discovery look completely different. And then the explanation came out that there are different houses of Klingons, that some are not well known, some are ostracized from the greater Klingon community, and that became the retroactive reason why the Klingons in the original series had like flat foreheads and looked like Genghis Khan. And then in Next Generation, they've got this new look. It's because the Klingons have races within the Klingon family, and that the Klingons in Discovery are from like a really old house that you haven't seen before and that have been sort of out of the limelight, so they look totally different. So there have been things where like there would be a fan reaction and then an explanation for why that thing is different. So I need to sit down and watch it, but I also haven't watched Enterprise because of that damn song at the beginning of the show.
The only series in the Star Trek franchise that has words.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even made for that. It's in Patch Adams for crying outside.
It's like, who made this choice?
Yeah.
Who chose that? That makes no sense.
No.
So I want to find like a copy that I can download where someone's just cut that out, so I can just not even hear the beginning chords or anything.
It's been a long time.
It has been.
Getting from there to here.
That's gonna be stuck in my head now.
Oh, you're welcome.
I am a big fan of when Star Trek has parodied in popular culture. Pigs in Space from the Muppet Show,
Yep.
I think, is one of the things that really just nails it. It's so good, top to bottom. But there are the haters out there, and do you ever find with a love of sports and a love of Star Trek that those things are, I mean, it's oil and water, right? You don't find a lot of people who share both of those things as a passion.
Not with the same fervor. There are plenty of fans of both, but not like you are either. If you're going to identify as one or the other, you'll pick one.
Yeah.
You'll pick one.
You'll pick one or the other, not both. Yeah.
So do you ever find yourself, you're at a game and someone like, says like, well, live long and prosper. And then you go, whoa.
No, I haven't. It's interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that now.
Yeah,
but
people
no.
will approach you now and
Yeah,
be
they're gonna-
how are the stats? I was a big fan.
And they'll have to whisper it and nudge, wink, wink.
And it's something that is loved by so many people, and it's got such a length and a life that it is very similar to sports.
Yeah,
where
it is.
You can be a fan of the Cleveland Indians from this time frame, but then be a fan of another team from this time frame, and that's all that they're doing with this. Are there sports in the Star Trek series at all? Do they ever mention baseball?
Well, they do mention baseball in a couple of episodes. Now, like in The Next Generation, The Big Goodbye, where they go in the holodeck and he's Dixon Hill. And Picard is Dixon Hill. They talk about baseball and the hitting streak. And because at the time they're there, DiMaggio's hitting streak was just getting started. Parisian Squares is kind of a sport that they play for their time. But they never really mentioned, I think baseball's the only one. Cisco. Baseball is a huge part of his life in Deep Space Nine.
But there are more like intellectual games, variations on chess, like 9-dimensional chess. What's the game that Data plays that alien and he plays him to a draw every time because he figures that's the only
Stratagema.
way. That's Stratagema.
In Stratagema, yeah.
And there are some combat sports, I believe, that are usually used as like a replacement for calisthenics. So you would go and you could do judo with Worf in the holodeck.
Yeah, his calisthenics were fighting aliens.
Fighting aliens that are trying to kill him.
They're trying to kill him. Those are his calisthenics.
Worf has some of the best the episode, the episode where Wesley Crusher is asking everyone for dating advice, and it like Worf's sequence starts with him like screaming into the camera, and he says like that's the mating call that you make for the female Klingon, and then she throws things at the male while he reads her poetry.
Yeah, there's a lot of scratching.
There's a lot of scratching and clawing
going on.
And then when Picard is the last person he talks to, and he goes, "Hey, Captain, I have heard that you are going around asking people on how to understand women. And as soon as I know, I will let you know." And Picard walks out. I love the moments when Picard gets uncomfortable, like around kids. He doesn't know, and they make that Captain Picard Day.
Yeah. And
then an admiral calls in to the view screen, so he's talking to the admiral, and Captain Picard Day is
banner in the background.
Behind him.
I also find it funny that there are people from that series who found new ways to create revenue. For example, Jonathan.
Frakes.
No, who played Q?
John Delancey.
Yeah. So he's got a business where he'll call you on your birthday. It's like $50, and he'll call you on your birthday, and he gives you a 2-minute greeting. So it's like, "Hey, it's Q from Star Trek, and I just wanted to wish you a galactic birthday." And he said most of the time he ends up chatting with the person, so you end up getting like a 20, 30-minute phone call. And he said it's been interesting now that he's a part of 2 television series that have an extreme cult following. So Breaking Bad and Star Trek The Next Generation.
Can't forget My Little Pony.
No, and I'm sure he's gone to many.
He does.
Many.
He does go. There's a great documentary about bronies, and he's heavily featured in it.
Is he?
Him and there's like one woman who does most of the pony voices.
Oh, I've seen the trailer for that. It's the woman who does the voice of like Tommy Pickles and everything like
and
that
so
too. She's Applejack.
Yeah. He talks about basically like the similarities in the communities between My Little Pony and Star Trek, in that the people who show up for the conventions, they don't just love it. It's their identity. Like they're like them being a part of it is so important. And he thought, he was just going to take this kids show that was for young women, and then it turns out that teenage boys fucking love that show. And they call themselves bronies. If you're a male fan of My Little Pony, you're a brony, and it's just you just like it for whatever reason. It's your thing. And he thought he was going to be weirded out when he'd go to these conventions, but he's like, no, actually, these are like people who have found their tribe, right? Star Trek was that for a lot of people. That I like this thing and I can't talk about it with anyone. But then you go to a convention and you find people who are as into it as you are, and suddenly you realize that you do belong somewhere. And I think that's really special. But so he does that. I don't think he gets Breaking Bad conventions.
Oh no, he's been at a couple where he's been.
But how long are those going to be around for, though?
I think a long time. Because have you watched any of Better Call Saul?
A little bit.
Okay, so I have a feeling that Vince Gilligan will end up making an entire universe. You might as well just call it like the New Mexico universe. And
the New Mexiverse.
He's got an interesting character who can play into these things earlier on, where I kind of part of the thing I see with Breaking Bad, and I know that this is not like everyone's wheelhouse but mine, but these people are all interconnected. They just don't know it. And they're all occupying this space. It's sort of like when you find out that you lived across the street as a kid from somebody for a long time and you're friends with them as adults. It's kind of wild to me to think of those things. And I think that they're going to continue basing those out. And so, of course, he goes to these. When they do like a Breaking Bad panel at like South by Southwest, like he's there, and then he'll sign some autographs afterwards.
Right, but is J.J. Abrams going to make like the Kelvin timeline of Breaking Bad?
Oh my God, I would love that.
just basically, it's Breaking Bad with light flares everywhere.
Okay, so let's polish this podcast off with a couple of like little easy ones, right?
Okay.
If someone were to give you a gift and it was going to be a baseball card of any player, any particular era, and something you'd want to keep and not just turn around and sell for a bunch of money,
sell it,
yeah. Because that's what I would do with a baseball card.
I'd say Babe Ruth.
Yeah,
I would say Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth.
What is it about the Babe's career that really like you follow?
He was an ordinary Joe that played baseball. He would eat hot dogs and drink beer game day before he went out onto the field. He was just an ordinary guy with, like I said, a big old beer belly, skinny legs that knew how to hit the hell out of a baseball.
Yeah.
That's why. And he was mythical beyond mythical. He was homely. He wasn't a Hollywood star, though he did do some movies. That I would say that's his appeal. He was just an ordinary guy that was able to play a kid's sport like nobody else.
I also love the fact too that he was in a state of arrested development, right? So he was in this orphanage, and he pretty much was purchased out of this orphanage.
Yeah.
In fact, he attributed a lot to there was a bishop or something that was because it was a Catholic orphanage.
Yeah, Father Flanagan, who really instilled the love of baseball into George. And so he really didn't have a childhood per se. No.
And so he ends up playing, and so he always identified with kids. Mm-hmm. And I think he loved seeing kids at the ballpark. Yeah. And, there's, of course, the mythic stories of him bringing 500 pairs of shoes to places so that everyone's got shoes. And I find that to be such an interesting aspect of that man's life.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite baseball movie?
The Natural.
The Natural?
Even though it's not historic, but I would watch that over and over and over and over again. I like the movie. I'm a Robert Redford fan to begin with. I would say The Natural would probably be my number one baseball movie.
And I love the uniforms from that era, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when the caps were still just like cloth pieces. And The Sandlot means so much to me. And that's, of course, Tucker and I's era. That movie really instilled a love of baseball into kids. And then instilled a love of that backyard baseball.
Right.
Where... you had to scrounge for a ball, and they're glorified pickup games is what they were.
Is it bad that mine is Angels in the Outfield?
No, but
I won't think of you any differently, but I don't know.
I grew up watching that movie all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, we had it. And I was trying to think of what baseball movie was I really into. I was really into Angels in the Outfield.
Were you,
Big
huh?
time.
That explains a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a real Joseph Gordon-Levitt fan. I just don't know what to tell you.
Wow. Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Good for you.
I feel like there were a lot of contracts that were getting fulfilled at that time.
Matthew McConaughey is in that film. He's got a bit part.
Yeah.
He's one of the first guys that an angel helps, I believe. Tony Danza is in it.
Yeah.
Doesn't know he has lung cancer. Obviously, Christopher Lloyd is the Al. Is that his name, I think?
Yep. Because it's supposed to be for the American League, and he's like, you can call me Al.
Call me Al. Danny Glover.
He was the manager of the team, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he ends up adopting the kids, right?
That's
Danny Glover?
He adopts the kids.
Yeah.
But
right, like they're just going to give these kids over to this guy because he's like, we spent some time together this summer where we literally believed angels were helping us.
You would make a great father.
Well, and he has to tell him the angels don't like all the cursing.
Yeah.
So he's always cursing.
Right.
And the way they show the cursing is they make it, you can't really hear what he's saying in the movie because it's a kid's movie.
Right.
But then he goes over to the players and has to, hey, no swearing. And I just remember the, like the Tim Allen sound that comes out of all of them at that moment. With Major League 2.
The second one?
Major League 2 might be my other favorite baseball movie.
When they replaced Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
The former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, was in that one.
Because that's when they went from R to PG-13.
Yeah.
The first one was R.
I love when they bring in people for bit parts in movies that just crush it. For example, in Rookie of the Year, where the young boy plays for the Cubs, you get two roles that I think are amazing. Number one, John Candy as the announcer is one of the best announcers ever. Even when they had John Gordon playing himself in Little Big League. But Sidney Poitier plays the manager in Rookie of the Year, and he can never pronounce the kid's name right. So it's like Rodenberger, and it becomes this like running joke. And it's like, this guy this guy's one of the finest actors of his generation, and he's just getting these little bit parts. He's sharing scenes with Daniel Stern, and I love it. I think there's great moments in these movies. You must be a fan of Little Big League, where the kid inherits the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, that was a decent movie, and I know that John Gordon. I used to do a show with John Gordon on a radio station that I worked at before I moved around, and he loved doing that. Of course, he still gets his $10 checks in his royalties in the mail from that. Gets his $10 royalties. Wally. I can't remember. Wally was his first name of the announcer.
And I love too how it's the same shot. They must have filmed it all like in one afternoon, because it's the same shot of him holding his ear and just saying it. And they're like, okay, so this game is like this. He's like, okay, here we go.
If you can't tell from my uncle's voice, he's been making a living in radio for a very long time now. How long have you been doing radio?
33 years.
Wow.
I remember like one time. Mom dropped Brianna and I off with Uncle Paul when he was calling a Bombers game. Mm-hmm. And so we got to hang out like up in the booth with him. And I just remember being in awe of watching him and listening to him talk like stream of consciousness with all of this information in front of him. And he was able to like watch the scene play out and just explain it. I still can't figure out what it takes to be able to do something like that. Drugs. Just pretend like no one knows what you're really saying. So
Right,
you just say
exactly.
whatever you want.
You just hope the people listening are hammered or stoned. You're good.
But you know that like those sports people are sitting down and writing down some of the stuff you're saying, so they can call you back later and tell you either you were right, you were wrong, or they agree.
Newspaper
disagree.
guys would listen, and that's how they'd write their story. They wouldn't go to the game; they'd just listen to me and then listen to my post games. Oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. Yeah, all right, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, look at that!
Then I'd read the next day and like, hey,
That's how I work.
that's how I said that.
In 33 years in radio, congratulations. That's a medium where people get chewed up and spit out quite a bit, so you must have something special going on.
No, I just enjoy it. I left it for 2 years and then went back at it because I missed it too much.
It's fun. It's addicting, isn't it?
It is. Very much so. Yeah.
So, well, you got to start a podcast. Do you have a podcast?
No, but I'm thinking about our company is thinking about doing something like that.
If you did a baseball podcast, that would kill.
You think so?
I think so. Absolutely.
so?
With your knowledge and your passion for it,
Yeah.
100% that would kill.
I think you get some pretty fun guests too.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
and the nice thing is that you're
absolutely.
not relegated to the territory you're in. Like
No.
people can listen to you anywhere in the
Wherever.
world.
Yep.
Which is awesome. Like
Right.
we just posted on our Facebook the other day, only 2 states in the union haven't had a download of JJ Meets World yet. Which is cool to
Right.
think. Like we recently did an episode on the play that JJ's in right now, the Santaland Diaries, and that's our most downloaded episode, and it's been mostly coming out of California for whatever reason.
Okay.
So
What's
like
all the artsy fartsy people out there? I
must
suppose
be,
that
but,
like it.
But I mean, there's an audience for baseball all over the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think you would have a good
Yeah.
show, really good show.
I'll have to
So
think about that.
look for your podcast coming up in the near future.
in the near
I hope
future.
that's. And if people want to reach out to you, if they want to talk Star Trek or if they want to talk sports, do you have a Twitter handle?
I do have a Twitter handle. It is P Diddy.
Nuh-uh.
Oh yeah.
Good
do you
for
have
you.
it? Do you have it?
I'll
It's
pull it
PDIDDIE 517. P Diddy 517.
That's awesome. And make sure to include the hashtag Uncle Baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
As part of that thing.
As part of
Paul,
that.
This has been a real pleasure today. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for spending some time with us. And of course, we'd love to be on your podcast when you launch it. We can keep the
Well, you'll be
swears
there for
down
the
to a
very first
minimum.
episode. You'll
Yeah.
have to, since
Yeah,
you
two guys
started
who
it.
know pretty much nothing about baseball on a baseball podcast.
But you know
That'd be
about
great.
podcasts.
That's
and so
true.
You
That's
can
true.
nursemaid me through those difficulties, mister.
There you go.
And I can talk baseball movies like
yeah.
there's no tomorrow. And
Right.
even baseball music. I'm
Oh,
a
yeah.
fan of like songs that are featured in ballparks
Right.
or songs that are about baseball.
Yeah.
So it's just the sport itself.
It is.
I find most of the time when I go, I'm looking for myself on the Jumbotron.
The kiss cam.
Yeah.
Watch out.
And have you noticed how many weird cams there are nowadays?
Oh, yeah.
I saw the Simba cam for the first time where people hold up their baby and they're supposed to be like from the Lion King, like Sambenya, Mama Mia.
Is there like any kind of a marking on the head?
I've seen
from
a couple
broke-
people like try and like take a little ketchup,
ketchup and
like
put,
yeah,
oh
so they
boy,
can get it.
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com and you can find direct contact info for JJ. You know, I was just thinking about this and what if they made a sequel to Big where Tom Hanks plays the grown-up version of himself now, but then he wishes he was small?